Hi, I'm Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that focuses on musicians, authors, and interesting people. We like to say we're making a difference one artist at a time. So sit back, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. Today's podcast guest hails from the great state of Texas and has been a fixture on the red dirt music scene for well over a decade. He joins me with a brand new EP that will be out early next year. And you're going to hear several songs from that today. Please welcome Brazos Wind recording artist Phil Hamilton. Phil, welcome aboard.
Having me. This is the long-awaited podcast. We have, because of my terrible remembering skills and my ADD, this is probably our third or fourth attempt to get in touch with each other.
Not a problem. Glad we got this done. He's calling in from New Mexico today, and where in New Mexico is that?
This is I'm in Ruidoso. Ruidoso is very special in the fact that it's the most southern part of the mountain chain in the United States. I would say with the exception of a small portion in a town called Cloudcroft, which is a little bit even more south than where we're at. But it's only about 45 minutes to an hour from here. So really, we're all kind of part of that. And it's just a really unique place. There's nowhere else you can go where you can be on a 13,000-foot mountain or close to 13. Actually, we are a little over 13 now for our peak, but about an hour to 2 hours away is complete desert land. So it's really unique territory and just a special place to be this far south, which is close to my home state, Texas.
Very good. Yeah, I was going to say, you grew up in the state of Texas. Where were you born and raised? Because we've got a lot of listeners in Texas.
Yes, I was born in actually just outside of Dallas, Texas, but that was completely different back then. I mean, we're talking Dallas had not grown near what it was now, but is now. But we ended up moving to a little suburb of Fort Worth called Burleson, Texas, which now looks like, a huge, little. It's just a bustling city now, but it was a very, very, very small town. So I grew up. Small town, country living, safe, ride your bike until the sun comes down and you better be at dinner table, whatever. And really my growing up for 20 years of living in that small community in Burleson, Texas.
Awesome. Very good. Now let's talk about your musical influences, your background, early influences and such. When did you start a love affair with music?
I was very young. I was probably, I was driven by music probably my whole life. Now seeing my daughter who is almost 8 years old and she takes after me a lot. That's just how it is. Some kids are over like their mother or their father, one of the two. She really does look a lot like me and acts a lot like me.
She doesn't have the beard and mustache though, right?
Yeah. A really old girl. I don't know what happens. Mother part of it, but seeing her influence in music, I know that I was like that at an early age as well. But I would say in my young teens, when I was about 13 or so, and starting to kind of have some opinions of my own, I just was driven by music, and my family was really big into classic rock. That was their whole thing. They came from seeing shows live. My mother still has. They have ticket stubs from, seeing Led Zeppelin for, $5 at Dallas Music Hall.
Yeah.
The doors even almost breaking because they were just so eager to get in the building. And, he has, they've seen Jimi Hendrix, they've seen, all the greats. And I grew up around all that. And my dad had some guitars laying around the house. He was not a great player, but he could pick and play. And I guess my interest was there, just seeing those guitar cases around and seeing, playing them and goofing off with his old guitars. And then I would go in my room, and I wasn't a big sports guy, even though I'm a big fitness buff, and I spent a lot of time in the gym, and my fitness part of my life is a big deal, which is so strange because it doesn't seem like they mingle too much together in the music world with a lot. But I was never good. That being said, I was never good at sports. So I was just drawn by music at an early age. In my early teens, I started locking myself in. I was listening to records that my mom and dad had, a lot of Beatles records and Crosby, Stills and Nash, and then I got obsessed with Tom Petty, and that was the first real dive into that world, and I never left. I've been a fan of others and Petty and even more of the Jerry Jeff Walker and those guys, some more songwriter type music.
Absolutely.
Really started gravitating to that as I got older and dived into more of just knowing about what's good music. You just kind of learn. I liked the trendy music when I was younger in my teens, but I always went back to my roots, and those were those records that my mom and dad had laying around. And so it's funny today, still to this day, if I get with some musician friends of mine or in the right setting, doesn't happen all the time, and everybody wants to fire off every classic country song they know, or Merle Haggard tune, and they can just go one after another. I can't do that because I just don't know them as much. But I could play every Tom Petty song he ever wrote. And
you came to me via a mutual friend, Bradshaw Lambert. Bradshaw and I go back about 20 years, and I see he's producing this new project. How'd you and Bradshaw meet?
That was just what I call divine intervention. I'm a believer, and I just follow Christ and his plan for my life. I'm sober now, so I'm making better decisions with my life, and I was always in church my whole life. I didn't go wrong or crazy. I just had a little wild streak with the alcohol for 20 years of my life. But when I got here, I really do believe that everything is just meant to happen the way it should happen if you're following and you're really putting that trust in your life. But here we are in the middle of this paradise, south of southern part of the Rocky chain, mountain chain, and we here this little bitty community, Ruidoso, and it's funny. Bradshaw says, I ended up meeting this guy that has. Here I am from LA. Got a background in, record label and all this kind of stuff. And he meets the one guy that, came from a touring background. And even though I was kind of on I don't know what you would call it, a reset of my own, there was no hiatus. I was working harder than I've ever worked, but I was just kind of resetting and rebranding what I was doing, sober and learning things and playing just solo acoustic and all these different things. And we can talk about more of that later. But that's how he and I ended up finding each other. And just because it's a small town, and we hit it off, got to chatting after a show or two. And he said, I looked you up. You have millions of streams. He said, what are the odds that these two people ended up in a small, tiny mountain community in New Mexico? I'm just glad that we did run into each other because it took a year of just cultivating that friendship, having fun. I never asked Bradshaw for anything. As far as my music or my career, I just enjoyed his company, and we really developed a wonderful relationship. And I would love to hear his stories of things that he's seen and done along the way in his career. And I would tell him all my stories. And I just have crazy stories from the road of being on the road for the last 15 years. And then one day we were out at the Texas Club here where I have a residency and play. And we were just short chatting. And he said, do you want to do this again? Do you want to take a run at it and release some new music and some of these songs you're playing? And I said, yeah, I think I'm ready to do that. and I want to do that. And I looked at him and I said, you want to do it with me? And he said, yeah, I do. Let's do it. And so it's been great because at the end of the day, I don't want to, I'm at a place in my life where I don't want to force it. I just want to let it happen organically and go with the flow,
Right.
And that's what we're doing.
Very good. Give him a big old hug for me, okay?
I will.
Okay, real good. Now, the EP is called the Ruidoso Sessions Volume 1. It was recorded by Richard Cagle at Montrose Studios in Ruidoso, New Mexico. What's unique about this project is it's all unplugged. It's just you and your guitar. Can you tell us about the Ruidoso Sessions? Yes.
Okay, so perfect spinoff of the conversation about Bradshaw and I. We, I'd had several folks around as I had taken a step back from the big touring thing. And even when I say big touring, I wasn't, massively, hitting arenas and things like that. I played big shows in my life, but at this point in my career, it was more bar gigs and things like that and gigging, and trying to find my next move. And so, I'm here and I'm learning how to just reinvent myself as a, really putting all the putting it all out there, just naked, me and a guitar, and learning how to own a room again and to, do that sober is very challenging. And I had done it in my life, let alone in my music life, in years, my whole career. I tell somebody this, I've told many of this. I never played a show fully sober, and I'd never recorded a song fully sober. So it was just to get out there and play sober was hard. And I had to do it just me and a guitar, grind it out, not have a comforter, the comfort of a band anymore behind me. And as I did that and grew, I had a lot of folks saying, man, where can I just listen to that? Just you and a guitar singing those cowboy songs. And I didn't have anything like that. And I have, just band records and things. And that's always been my focus. You write the song, you get the band in, you record the thing, and you release the record. And it's not like that all the time anymore. And so he said, just give them exactly that, you and a guitar. And he said, no pressure, no band, go back in the studio on your terms and just have fun. And I said, okay, let's do it. And it was funny. It took me a while to bite. I had actually kind of put it off. Oh, I can't do it this weekend or that weekend. Got these things to do. And then it just kept tugging on me. And Bradshaw kept pushing and saying, hey, we got to get in there. We got to get in the studio. And I'm so glad I did, because when we did, it was really a great experience. It was, we turned the lights down in that great studio. And I just, I did exactly that. I wanted just myself and a guitar, and these songs, some of them will be songs that I've recorded before on a different project, but never really got to see the light of day. And then some of them are brand new. And the experience was great. It was raw. We wanted to keep all the imperfections in there. You can actually hear some of my breathing at times. And I would say, hey, let's cut that out. And they said, no, let's keep it the way it is. And so it's just a very raw version of me and my guitar and my songs, and letting folks know, who I am and what I even sound like. I don't even really the same.
You're talking about new music. We do have a song brand new, came out in September, called Rock Bottom Whiskey. What's the backstory on Rock Bottom Whiskey?
Rock Bottom Whiskey is the story of my sobriety. It shares a lot of just my experience over the last several years, in my, even referring to my marriage and what that was like for my family. And, I'm 2.5 years sober now, and I see everything so much more clear and very differently. But, I have a very good friend that I write a lot of music with. His name's Hayden Hughes. He's from Lubbock, Texas. He lives in the DFW area now. And we became friends over the last several years. And he's a super talented singer-songwriter. And we wrote several songs together. Locomotive last time. We wrote Rock Bottom Whiskey, The Road. We've wrote many songs together. And he has a very similar experience. He's sober now as well. And working on his journey of sobriety in the earlier stages. I guess, he's, I think, almost a year now for himself. And I had this idea for a song, and I was like, I want to write this song about, it started with that line, I was a drinker, hell of a lover, and I had these lines, and I called him, and he said, yeah, let's do that. I got an idea for that song. And we went months without talking about it again. And I knew I needed to get away. So I went up to my buddy's place where I could be alone in northern Idaho. I'm pointing like it's up behind me because I guess it's somewhere back there, northern Idaho. And I go up there in the winter 1 year ago and stayed in this little cabin on the mountain. And long story short, it was very isolated, and I had alone in my thoughts. And I always joke around and tell people it's like you can be in the middle of grizzly bear country just almost to the border of Canada, in the middle of nowhere in the mountains, but you can get cell phone service. So I was able to get Hayden on the phone, and I put it on the window of that cabin, and we wrote that song. And he said he had the idea of Rock Bottom Whiskey hitting rock bottom. And so we wrote the song, and I stayed there for 5 days, cleaned up that song. We started a few others, which we ended up putting to paper later. And that's where the song came from. And I'm so grateful that we were able to release that and let folks, hear it. So.
All right. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what's going to happen next year. EP due out in 2024. Here's Phil Hamilton, Rock Bottom Whiskey, right now on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
I was a drinker, hell of a lover. I thought I'd never slow down. Drank from the handle, always half empty. Close every joint in this town. I drank all the whiskey till I couldn't stand. Stay out all night with all of my friends. Oh, but I never knew, to tell you the truth, you can run, but you can't hide. When a rock bottom whiskey runs dry. A few years later, I finally found out what it was she tried to say. I wouldn't trade the best of my Sundays for all of the trouble I found. And it's easy to see what she needed from me is a man staring back at me now. Oh, I drank all the whiskey till I couldn't stand. Stay out all night with all of my friends. Oh, but I never knew, and to tell you the truth, you can run, but you can't hide. When a rock bottom whiskey runs dry. Oh, I drank all the whiskey till I couldn't stand. Stay out all night, raising hell with my friends. Oh, but I never knew, to tell you the truth, you can run, but you can't hide. When a rock bottom whiskey runs dry. When a rock bottom whiskey runs dry.
Great music right there, Rock Bottom Whiskey from Phil Hamilton. Phil will be releasing that as a part of an EP coming out later next year. And he joins me today on the Someone You Should Know podcast. By the way, the video to that song will be down in the show notes, so be sure to check that out. And before we continue, I'd like to hope that you are enjoying the Someone You Should Know podcast. You can find us on the web at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast.com. There you're going to find our recent news, our archive of past episodes, and a whole lot more. And if you really are enjoying the podcast, we invite you to leave us a review. As a matter of fact, if you're not enjoying the podcast, leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing and how we can improve the podcast. We are so blessed to reach so many cities around the world, 1,700 cities around the world, and over 80 countries. We'd like to salute a couple of new ones: Morrisville, North Carolina, Arroyo Grande, California, and Helsinki, Finland. The Someone You Should Know podcast, heard wherever quality streaming audio is available as we continue our podcast with Phil Hamilton. Phil, you've had the great honor of sharing the stage and working with names like Turnpike Troubadours, Cody Jinks, and Shooter Jennings, one of my favorites, Midland, Whiskey Myers, Randy Houser, Chris Christopherson, the great Chris Christopherson, Dean Dillon, Clint Blank, Gary Allen, another one of my favorites. This is just to name a few. What's your high water mark?
I don't know. I think it's pretty high, if I was to be honest. I think just like anyone else, let's be honest, the greatest male singer that's on the planet right now would be Chris Stapleton. And I think to say that anybody can hold a candle to his writing and his ability to sing, I mean, there's no other. So I guess if I was dreaming, that would be the because some of these big guys, like you mentioned, Jinx, and some of the, I was, somewhat friends with these guys. And I say somewhat friends because I don't ever want to try to, say that we were, but we hung out every weekend and things like that. We were all working, all traveling.
Yeah.
But I was really fortunate that I was in the same town and became friends with some of these guys long before they exploded, and I have had an interesting story with each of them. Maybe everybody has that. Maybe it's not just me, but I do find it strange that so many of them I've had these great experiences. I did Snow Angels in the parking lot of a tiny little venue in Fort Worth when with the Turnpike Troubadours, whenever about 30 people showed up, because a crazy snowstorm happened, and we were in the west part of Fort Worth, actually, a place called Spencer's Corner, and it's been gone for years and years, but it's actually a billiards place at the bottom and had this little stage at top, and we played with Turnpike that weekend, and they were, like I said, crazy little things like that. I partied with Whiskey Myers, in rooms that held 50 people, and before they were selling out massive arenas and playing Madison Square Garden. And people used to ask me if I was Cody Jinks, or ask Cody if he was Phil Hamilton because he had a beard in mind, joke around about it. And now I can't go on sometimes I hear that often. It's the opposite. It's, you're Cody Jinks. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But I do know. But it's funny. I just feel like it's a great part of my story, and I'm even more grateful now that I know these guys. I don't ask anything from them. I don't bug them unless we see each other or something. But they're working, they're doing their thing, and I'm so proud of all these guys. That I was able to be a part of. And then the big greats, getting to play shows with Christopherson, and see those guys. Dwight Yoakam and Midland. I ended up partying with Midland until they're forcing them off of our van, saying, we got to go. And we just had such a great time. And those connections and those times, it's all part of the story,
It's strange. Over the last 6 months, I think I've had 4 acts from New Mexico. This is kind of funny. One of which was a dear friend of mine who used to be on the radio down the hall from me. And I believe what's the name? Flat Black is the name of their band. They're let me see. I'm trying to think where they're at. I know they're in, and I just had a band a couple of weeks ago called Casual Fridays, which is from New Mexico also. So it's I guess New Mexico might be the next Austin. Who knows?
Well, kind of like that at times. It's very the music scene as dispersed, as the communities are in bigger cities. We only have, like I said, bigger cities. We only have like 2 or 3. I would say Las Cruces, Albuquerque, Santa Fe is pretty big now, but that's really it. The rest, everything is so spread out. I mean, when you leave and come off the mountain and go somewhere else, you may be in the desert and not see just but a few cars for 2 and 3 hours. I mean, New Mexico is very vast, but for a place like that, it is very densely populated with musicians, and they really, really take to the music here. The state in general, wherever you play, tends to be, really good shows. People who are, even if it's not a full house, there are people engaging or listening. And I really think that's why we saw such a spike in my streaming over the last, my streaming music over the last, year and a half, is because of the connection I've made out west. It's the only thing I can think of, because I wasn't doing everything by the book. I wasn't traveling, back to my major, areas, DFW, Fort Worth, Dallas, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all these other areas where we, Oklahoma City, and then up into Kansas, and all these things that we were doing before. But yet I'm seeing more out here with less. And I think it's because people are listening and they're really, really engaged. And whether that's 30 people or whether it's a few hundred or a few thousand, I think it makes a difference.
Very good. New music, another song that has Hayden Hughes helping on you, called Locomotive. You mentioned it a little briefly earlier. What's the backstory on Locomotive?
Locomotive is about my grandfather. I think, like anyone, when you first lose your grandfather, or the first one out of a pair or whatever you have, I was lucky. I had all my grandparents for most of my life, my younger life. And we have a big Italian family, Sicilian family. My grandfather was he was the great, and wonderful man, larger than life type, and when he left, I think he never, like everybody, your life changes. Everything is different when the king falls, so to speak. And so I just was, 3 years later, my grandmother had left this earth. And I remember thinking of both of them and just him and missing his spirit and just how we would all come together. And there was nothing that would come in the way because we knew we were going to be there with him. Now it seems like it's harder for all of us to get together. Just a way a way it works. But my grandfather was a big lover of trains. He had all these big train sets. And he was an artist. So he had built all the the landscape and he meticulously had the cities. He would let us play with these trains. And I mean, some of these were worth a lot of money. Some were old, some were very valuable. And he didn't care. He let us play with the cars as long as we were cautious, And this was like the size of a big room. It was huge, big plywood decking. And he had built everything on it. And so I had this idea for a song and just the freedom of what he felt when he was playing with trains or thinking of trains or when he must have just saw them, what he thought. And so I called Hayden Hughes up. I was at our old house in Glen Rose, Texas at the time. I remember sitting there with my wife and Erica, and we were chatting about some stuff and ideas for the song. And he came over, I guess, either that day or the next day, and we wrote Locomotive. And I had the original paper where we wrote it on. So to me, that song is ultra special because it's about my grandfather. And just to be frank, I just like the song. There's not very many songs I of my own that I'm like, I like that song. Most of them I'm too critical of, and that one I just enjoy.
Well, I'm gonna like it even more because you mentioned something that your grandfather had that my father and I had done from the time that I was like 9 years old until the time that I graduated. Is we had a model railroad in our basement, and every year we had on another table and everything. Luckily, I've got some of those things up in the rafters for posterity's sake. Hopefully, maybe I can bring them down someday and let them run on the track one more time. And I'll think of you. Locomotive, the song right now. Everyone climb aboard. Here comes Phil Hamilton. New music. Here's Locomotive on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
Used to sit out on the rails back when I was young, pocket full of pennies waiting for the trains to come. I'd be whistling Dixie, cane pulled in my hand, hear that old whistle blowing steam, caution to the wind. I'm just chasing down a feeling before it's up and gone. Locomotive roll on. I've been thumbing through the canyons, my shadow as my guide, born a drifter, son. And that's something you can't hide. Things rough around the edges, and I'm busting at the seams. We don't take for granted what the door not might bring. I'm just chasing down a feeling before it's up and gone. Locomotive roll on. Locomotive roll on. So lay a penny on the tracks when I'm dead and gone. Locomotive roll on. Just chasing down a feeling before it's up and gone.
song right there, Locomotive from Phil Hamilton on the new EP from Brazos Wind Records, which will be out in 2024. Is that still looking good for 2024 there, Phil?
Yes, and we're going to do a volume 2. So we want to, and I've got a little surprise maybe that will happen to combine both of those.
Oh,
and,
cool, awesome, very good.
Like I said, this record and this whole deal, the acoustic sessions, is just a celebration of the last couple of years of my sobriety and taking things in a different direction, just being more focused and letting folks hear the new me. And I say the new me is because some of these songs, they sound a little different because I'm a little different. And my voice has changed a little bit with cutting out all the bourbon. And I just feel good, and I just want to share it just like raw as I can get. And it seems like it's doing well. So we're going to combine those two maybe on something special for our fans.
Very good. Now you mentioned earlier that you have some good road stories here, and the next feature is called Tales from the Road. These are those infamous road stories where things didn't go quite as planned. I read that you were on a tour bus for many, many years with your band. I'm sure you got a couple of good road stories to tell. So what would you say Phil Hamilton's Tales from the Road might be? Okay,
so I've got way too many, and we have not near enough time.
Oh, give me one or two. Go ahead.
Give you one good one here. We had our old bus. It was actually a nice coach, but, just older, now probably obsolete these days. But it was a 90s model Prevost bus, we toured around and went through 2 motors in that thing, which, about killed me. But we did put the miles on, and that thing that one, it seemed like it always gave us trouble. We actually had a T-shirt that said "Pray for the Prevost." Because it was a gamble if we were going to make it to the gig, but we got a new motor in it years later, and it was great after that. So, but buses are a money pit, and just touring's hard, and it is what it is. But we were driving back from a gig. We had played this festival and outside of Springfield, Missouri, and it was a total bomb. It didn't go to plan. I mean, no one showed up. It was like volunteers. It was way in the woods. It was not thought out well. The bus barely made it back in there. And they felt really bad that it didn't pan out as so many festivals don't, before they become big. And they said, well, we feel bad, so just take all the booze. And I drank a lot of booze. So and so did my band. We grabbed all the bottles. I mean, we had bottles of liquor, and my tour manager loads it up all on the bus. His name's Josh Wacious, and still good friends today. And he's actually still touring and working with bands professionally out of Nashville and all over the place. But we leave that morning I think we left through the night, and we about early in the morning, we're pulled over. And my dad at the time was driving the bus for us. He was driving on the weekends for me, which was nice, having my father there, but also a disaster at times because we fought. But, he pulls me out of my bunk and says, "We got a problem." He said, "I think this is it." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I think the motor's gone." He goes, we're not going anywhere. So we get up. Eventually, the band gets up, and we know that we're going to have to tow this thing in. We're in the middle of nowhere. We got the closest heavy-duty diesel shop was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was probably about 5 hours from where we were, 4 hours. And so it takes forever for this tow driver to get here. And by that time, we decided we're just going to drink. We couldn't make the next show. That was a Saturday. And we drank in the bar ditch, sitting there because the bus was broke down completely. And we just drank all the liquor we could possibly consume. And we were like, we have nothing else to do. We might as well. And I was already kind of heartbroken about the whole deal, thinking about the money I was about to have to find and shell out. And we were pretty intoxicated by the time the driver got there. The tow driver, and he gets in there, and his name's I think his name was Ron. It was Ron. I still remember it. This old man gets there, and he is given everything hell to get our drive shaft loose so he can connect the bus to his rig. Keep in mind, his rig is about the size of the bus.
Yes, I know.
We're long. He's almost 45 foot long. we are a train going down the highway once he gets going, and he is shifting through the gears at 80 and passing people at 80 miles an hour.
Oh, jeez.
We're all in the back of the sleeper, and the sleeper's just bouncing and bouncing. And I got the whole band, and my dad's in the front seat. We're all looking at each other like we're going to die. And he is just going up and passing people. He's got an old Peterbilt. I'm a big rig fan. I grew up loving those. So I was kind of half-assed enjoying this whole thing. But we get to Tulsa, and all of us just can't even believe we got there, in one piece. He drops the bus. We get it in. We call my brother-in-law to come pick the band up and get the trailer. Keep in mind, we're towing a trailer behind this, too. Mm-hmm. So we're 45 feet long, towing a trailer, which I'm looking at in my yard at the moment, band trailer. And then he's pulling us with 40 feet of his own, probably more. We get there, and we call my brother-in-law. We got to have a truck that can hold all those guys, the whole band, and the trailer. So we call a friend of mine and he says, hey, I know he called us and said, I got my dually. It's at my house. He's not far from your brother. Go tell him to come get my keys, and he can have my dually, my big Chevrolet, and come pick you guys up in Tulsa. So you're still with me, right?
Yeah.
Tulsa. Brother-in-law says, I can go and pick you guys up, which is a 6-hour commitment. My friend says, hey, you can take my big truck. It'll pull your trailer. It's got an auxiliary gas tank in the back, so it's full, and you guys can just book it home. You've had a long day. Get you boys home. My brother-in-law gets the keys, goes and picks us up. We're driving. It's in the middle of the night at this time. It's late in the evening. Mm-hmm. And my brother-in-law says, Phil, we got Josh Wacious sleeping in the back. Mm-hmm. He's hung in the very back. It's cold. And he's got blankets, and he's cuddled up in the back outside in the cab.
Oh, jeez.
We're pulling the trailer. We got 5 other guys in the back seat of the Chevrolet, and then my dad, a bigger man, in the front seat. So we're cramped. Josh takes one for the team. He said, I'm the road manager, and he's basically hammered at this point. He says, I'm going to sleep in the back end. We're driving. We don't even get, I think, past Oklahoma City. And my brother-in-law says, Phil, gas light's on, and we need to stop and get some fuel up here. And I said, no, he's got an auxiliary tank. We're good. He said, flip the auxiliary tank and get down the road. And he said, are you sure? And I said, yes.
Oh, no.
I said,
I see where this is going.
Yeah. I said, don't stop. Let's just get home. And about 3 minutes later, we're out of gas on the side of the highway. The auxiliary tank was empty. My friend thought it was full. And we're sitting on the side of the road. I have a picture that it kind of went around for a while that said filthy. It was kind of a thing that fans coined, and it became a sticker. And it was just kind of a silhouette of my face and the beard and the hair. Just a young thing that we did when we were in the early stages of our band. And it was fun. It sold a bunch of merch. But anyway, it was a big sticker on the back of my trailer. And we're sitting there, and I can't even believe the predicament that we're in. It's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And half the band's crammed in here. We've been in this process for 48 hours almost now. And a guy pulls over on the side of the road and says, hey, is Phil Hamilton in there? And I just remember thinking, praise God. So I don't know who you are, but yes, I am that guy. And he said, hey, I just saw your sticker. He said, is there anything we can do to help you guys? And he said, absolutely. We ran out of fuel. Well, if you know, in a diesel, it's not good. You have to prime, and you can get into some injector issues. Yeah, so we went into town. These guys drove me over there. My dad and I went with them, came back with everything we needed. We got the truck primed, took a little bit to get it started again. And then we got fuel in the truck, and we finally got headed home. But that was probably one of the
that is one of those. That is definitely a road story that if we survive that, we can survive anything. It's one of those kind of things, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I ran out of fuel, but it's not.
The EP is coming out in 2024. I know listeners are going to want to know when it's going to be released. So, what is some good social links that you've got so we can stay in touch with you?
The best way to stay in touch with me would be through my Instagram. Okay. And that is Phil Hamilton Music. Okay. There's like it's just Phil Hamilton Music. You can find me easy. And then from there, my Facebook pages, I have Phil Hamilton Music, and I have a personal Phil Hamilton page. I didn't mean for both of those pages to be a thing, but there's so many people on my personal that connect with me only through there for some reason. It seems like I just post on both. So Phil Hamilton Music on Instagram and Facebook, and that will get you covered on pretty much everything. And we do have, I do post everything on my X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm kind of trying to get better at that, and I'm enjoying that platform now, being a little bit more where I can put what I want on there and connect it all to everything. So that's the best way to find me.
Very
Phil
good.
Hamilton Music.
I'll include those down to the show notes. So if anyone's listening right now, if you want to connect with Phil Hamilton, if you're really digging the music, which I know you are, and you want to find out where you can get this next year, go down to the show notes and just click on one of the links and follow along with Phil, and you'd be just become subscribe to what he's doing there. Final song we're going to feature is called "The Road." It's another song that featured you and Hayden. Yeah, tell us about this particular song as we get ready to wrap up the show.
Okay, so we started this song during the pandemic. We started writing this at my place in Glen Rose that we were living at the time. And Hayden and I, like I said, we share a very similar story. We're very similar in the fact our personalities are a lot alike. We love to drink, and we're just kind of wild, and we've both settled down. He's got 2 boys now, and I've got my daughter, and we've calmed down over the years, but we had some wild times. And I think the road was kind of about just that, no matter how much we wanted to slow down or try to change our life, or it just seemed like the road was always calling us. And I know that sounds so cliche and it's so whatever, but it is so true. Sometimes something's not good for you, but that's your life. That's where you belong. It's where you feel most comfortable. It's where things still to this day, there's something endearing about being on the road for me. And even though I don't drink anymore, I don't party, I don't put myself in any of those positions. I tried to just play the songs or play the show and then shake hands till everybody's gone, and then I leave and go do my own thing. But there is something endearing about the road, no matter how things change. So we wrote that song about just the tongue-in-cheek way of saying that the road was the girl. The song will take you on a journey that maybe you're thinking it's about a woman or whatnot, and really it's not. It's about just the road calling and what it does to you as a young man. You have to be careful. It can swallow you up. It can give you all the freedom we talk about in that song, all the freedom you can handle. Well, it was too much for me, and I look back now, and that's why we wrote that song. And so it's cool. We actually finished that like 2 years later when I was up in, I think up here in New Mexico at the time. Had just moved to our first place up here, and we finished it, and it was funny. I was so surprised that I waited so long to refinish it. I love the song, and now it has become one of our favorites that we put on the acoustic track. So
very good. I know listeners are going to love it too. Phil, thanks so much for being part of the podcast today. I hope you had a good time. I definitely had a good time. I like your music for sure.
Oh, well, thank you. And you're a joy to talk to. Thank you for being patient with me. I know we had rescheduled this a few times, and I'm just so ADD sometimes.
It's not a problem. Not a problem. It's all part of the journey, my friend. It's all part of the journey.
But thank you for being persistent with me, because I knew it was going to be a joy. Somebody told me that I knew when we got on the phone we were going to have a great time. And Bradshaw told me that was going to happen.
Well, Bradshaw and I go way back. So just once again, give him a big old hug from me. Once again, everyone, Phil Hamilton on the podcast today. Thanks so much for tuning in to the show. And Phil, thanks again for being a guest.
Thank you, buddy.
On the table by the door, I left a note from the night before. Said I'm sorry that I'm leaving, can't do this anymore. Getting good at getting by. Take a hit, let it fly. We're just dancing around the edges of another long goodbye. She don't show no mercy, That's just the honest truth. All the freedom you can handle, she steals away your youth. You can't help but love her. She's got you by your soul. She ain't a woman, she's the highway. Down the road I go. There's a rhythm to this road. It's holding on, letting go. There's a cool breeze blowing and a story left untold. Santa Fe, San Antone. Some things are better left alone. Hell, I tried to say I love you. You and I both know she don't show no mercy. That's just the honest truth. All the freedom you can handle, she steals away your youth. You can't help but love her. She's got you by your soul. She ain't a woman, she's the highway. Down the road I go. She ain't a woman, she's the highway. Down the road I go. Show no mercy. That's just the honest truth. All the freedom you can handle, she steals away your youth. You can't help but love her. She's got you by your soul. She ain't a woman, she's the highway. Go. She ain't a woman, she's the highway. Down the road I go.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at Someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's Someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.